So at the end of the episode today, I'm going to give you a little crib sheet for how to determine something that has a good return on investment for you. But today in this episode, I want to talk to you about the top things that have returned their investment to me. Basically, the things I've invested in that have given me the biggest bang for my buck or brought money, time, ease into my life. Welcome to the Sunlight Podcast. In this show, we're talking about taxes, money, and careers for self-employed people who have a big vision for changing the world with their work. I'm your host, Hannah Cole, artist, tax pro, and the founder of Sunlight Tax. If you're a creative or soul-centered entrepreneur or wellness practitioner who wants to grow your business sustainably, manage your taxes, and build a stash of fuck you money so you can control your time and have a bigger impact with your work, you are in the right place. Hello. I am so excited to talk to you today. Today, I want to talk about return on investment, or ROI. If you don't know that term, ROI, I'm going to use throughout this episode. But yes, before I knew what business terminology meant, ROI means a return on your investment. So what do you get back from making an investment? And the reason I want to bring you this topic today is because I have had a really big evolution in the way that I think about investing in things in my career, in my business, in my art practice. And it's definitely true that there have been times when I have wasted my money and deeply regret it. But I have learned some things about what are the signals of something that will be a good return on your investment. So at the end of the episode today, I'm going to give you a little crib sheet for how to determine something that has a good return on investment for you. But today in this episode, I want to talk to you about the top things that have returned their investment to me. Basically, the things I've invested in that have given me the biggest bang for my buck or brought money, time, ease into my life. All right, so let's get started. On the personal side, I grew up very thrifty, very, very thrifty. I am a Yankee. I grew up in New England with that like frugal Yankee thing going on, hardcore. And as a person who was going into the arts, I knew I wanted to be an artist. I kind of knew or expected, whether this is reasonable or not, I had the expectation going into my art career that I would never make big dollar amounts, that I would be kind of eking out a living and that I would have to be careful with my money. So that is the attitude that I came into my art practice with. I have come to see over my experience now, talking to thousands of different artists and creative people about their practices, that this is not a universal. This is not how every artist approaches things. I, at the time, did think everybody was like me, but it's not true. So there's that thing that I had of being super, super thrifty, super reluctant to spend my money, super careful with every dollar is a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. It's very two-sided. So the good part of it is that historically, anytime I would make an art sale, because art, in my practice where I might work for 6 months to a year and then have a show and hopefully sell a lot of work, but no guarantee. So I never would know how much money would be coming in. I could never really rely on sales of my work in order to have an income. So the pattern that I got into as an artist was being very careful when I did get sales of paintings. And I would want to be incredibly smart with how I did spend that money. So for me as an artist, my money has tended to come in chunks because I might sell 5 or 6 paintings at a show, right? Or I might get a grant, right? It would tend to be big lumps that I would get money in and not slow and steady and regular, like a paycheck, like, most working Americans get. So I would tend to try to be as strategic as possible when I would make sales. And I always wanted to invest that money wisely, whether it was paying down debt. I always was very scared of debt and tried to stay away from it as much as I could. But where I had debt, I would pay that down quickly. And then the rest I wanted to invest for my future, because I came from this sense of, I don't know where the next dollar is coming from, and I want to build whatever security I can. Now, the other side of that reluctance to spend money is that there are times when I did what my then boyfriend, now husband, calls boondoggles, where I would go to tremendous lengths for piddly amounts of money, where it really, if I'm effectively analyzing my use of time, it was not worth it. And I should not have been spending my money that way. I now know, having studied economics, having gone back and studied finance and economics and money, I now know that we call that opportunity cost. Spending a whole lot of time on something that is not that valuable to you is a tremendous opportunity cost, because it makes you busy and unavailable to say yes to the thing that's more valuable. So that's not a good idea. Spending tons of your time is actually incredibly expensive in terms of opportunity cost. I now have the word to put on it. I didn't at the time. But I would find it incredibly hard to make the decision to actually spend money on a thing or actually make an investment, when sometimes it probably would have been incredibly wise for me to do. So over time, especially as I built my business, where it's a lot more obvious that investing in certain things can get you a result faster or with less stress, I have learned over time that at times making an investment in something, whether it's education, a coach, a course, a piece of equipment, sometimes the investment is extremely worth it. But it can be hard to tell sometimes whether it will be or won't, right? We're all hopeful at the outset. But I have had several really extreme examples where making an investment at a certain key moment has accelerated my business. And so I really feel like I want to share that with you. So let me give you some examples of times when I invested in my business, including my art business, where it paid off like crazy. Okay. So number one, probably the best ROI I've ever gotten in my life, and it's very simple, was buying my first personal finance book. I remember it to this day. I bought it in Brooklyn. It was a Susie Orman book. She has a ton of books, and I can't remember which one it was. Probably they've all been republished 6 times since that time. So the actual edition I had doesn't exist anymore. But from Susie Orman, from this personal finance book, I did learn the basics of personal finance and of investing. And that knowledge, for my $25 purchase, that knowledge has gotten me probably further than anything else. And part of the reason is that I did it so early. And so having invested in that education upfront and early, and when I say like buying the book, of course, is not the end of the story. When you buy a book, you also have to read it, right? You have to absorb the information. So I also invested the time in actually like dedicating a couple afternoons to like sit with it, take notes, make action plans for myself, make a list. I'm saying action plan because I think the book was actually called Susie Orman's Action Plan. And I actually did make lists for myself, and I did kind of lay out what I needed to do. So I think that was probably the biggest ROI I've ever gotten, partly because the initial investment was pretty small. It was about $25 book. And then it was, maybe 2 weeks of afternoons to actually read it. That was probably the bigger investment than the $25, truth be told. Everybody knows, like, a lot of us buy books and then don't read them. But it was really valuable, partly because it taught me how to use IRAs, and it also gave me the confidence I needed to get started with investing. So every year since that time, I have been absolutely religious about maxing out my IRA every year. I don't stress that much whether I'm picking traditional or Roth. Honestly, if you're doing one, that's great. I don't want to split hairs. Sure, there's some times where it's better for one person to do one versus the other, and there is a little strategy in there. However, I think people focus too much on that and distract themselves from the larger problem. Are you doing it at all? Like, if you are maxing out something every year, then worry about what you maximize, right? If you're asking that question to avoid making any investment at all, skip it and just pick one. I feel like that has been a really valuable thing for me because I have made it my religion to max out my IRA every single year. The amount of your IRA changes every year. You're allowed a little bit more incrementally each year. So, that's been between $5,000 and $6,000 ongoing since that time, which at this point is about 20 years ago. So the fact that I started investing in, opening IRAs, putting in my maximum $5,000, $6,000 every single year, and investing the money that's in those IRAs, that is probably the number one most valuable skill that I learned to do and habit I have instilled in myself. And if I did nothing else, that's the one that will carry me into, a retirement where I actually have financial security. So that's the one. And honestly, for you, same thing. Okay, so that's my number one. And also, just learning, frankly, I bought the Susie Orman book because at the time there were very few women personal finance people. And I was attracted to learning from a woman because of a lot of intimidation, feeling a real disconnect with men kind of giving me a meta message that investing is not for me and making me feel very intimidated and stupid that I didn't know the terminology. So that's the very first and best investment I've made. I've made others. Here's one that was in my art career. So this one happened actually not that long ago. It was in 2019. I had a solo show at my gallery, the Tracy Morgan Gallery here in Asheville. And when that show was happening, I had a lot going on, right? I'm running Sunlight Tax. And I actually think that the attitude of running a business like Sunlight Tax, where I now do pay money to outsource things, so I have the time to do the, important revenue generating things of the business, I have learned to outsource the sort of tasks that anyone can do and keep the work that only I can do for myself. So I actually, in 2019, partly out of necessity, I used that principle in my art career, kind of for the first time ever. I paid a studio assistant to help me install my show. So part of the reason there was that I was installing a show and I wanted it to look amazing, right? I hadn't had a show in a couple years and I just wanted it to be really splashy and awesome. So I painted a mural in the gallery. And of course, if you know my work, it's very labor intensive and pattern based and a little bit obsessive. And so I knew that I only had 5 days to install the show. And I wasn't sure I could get it all done in that time. Plus, as you know, if you're an artist, you know this. If you're not, you might not. There's a lot of other work involved when you're putting up a show. So you have to, there's like a press release, there's your artist statement, there's making sure all your images are lined up and, labeled correctly. There's like a lot of tasks. And I also had to run my tax business at the same time. So I hired a studio assistant. I hired my friend and I paid her hourly to help me paint this mural, to help me install the show. And what was awesome about that is it allowed me basically to go home at night and get a good night's sleep. So instead of being, a lunatic, the way I have installed shows in the past and done it all myself, stayed up all night for 3 nights in a row, and been basically a wreck when it came to the opening, this time I had a friend. So it was very fun. We would have a beer together, play really loud music in the gallery and paint this mural. It was wonderful. It was a great time. And I would go home and I would get some sleep. And so I was actually more functional that week than normal. And that was a great thing. So what was interesting is it allowed me the headspace to actually show up at my opening and perform the role of the artist at the opening really well. Whereas in the past, I have not done it well because I'm a wreck. I'm completely sleep deprived and basically just trying to get through it. Right. So I was able to come to my own opening, having had the conversation with my gallerist about which collectors had expressed interest, who of them was going to be there at the opening. I could look them up online before I showed up at the opening. I could approach them, be personable, not falling asleep. and actually engage with them. Like, what are you interested? What's your life look like? What do you collect, et cetera, right? And tell them the story of the work that they were interested in. So what do you think happened at that opening? I made a bunch of sales. So the funny thing is, like, we in the arts, a lot of times don't think of the work we're doing as a business per se. And, we don't want to turn everything into commerce. And I totally understand that. However, of course, I want to make sales. I've been working for 2 years to put together the work in this show. Of course, I want it to go and live out in the world, and I want to make those sales. I want to be paid back for some of the effort I've put into this show. So the cool thing was I was able to show up full force and absolutely prepared for the opening. I had a great time. I had these great conversations, and I connected with these collectors, and I made a bunch of sales of my work. Those sales were definitively because I was at the opening, prepared and rested and ready to have those conversations. And so I 100% know that having paid that studio assistant, having paid my friend to help me install the show, to reduce the burden of the work of installing the show, 100% paid itself back, and then some, and then quite a lot, because I made, a whole bunch of painting sales the night of the opening. All right. So big example of a great ROI, hiring out some of the tasks that are outsourceable. Okay. The next example of amazing ROI that I've gotten is deciding to use a business coach, hiring a business coach. This felt very fancy and luxurious when I was starting Sunlight Tax. And I had a lot of mental garbage around it. Like, do I even deserve this? Like, this seems like it's for fancier people than me. But even in the very first week that we worked together, she unlocked a little business problem I had been struggling with that I couldn't see clearly myself, but she could. And actually, this one little thing, so the issue was that I had to commit to a certain number of tax clients every year. And if they flaked on me, I had completely committed the resources already to having them. And so it was low commitment for them to flake on me, but high commitment for me to commit to them, to having the space and capacity to take them on. So I needed a way to discourage people from flaking, like to definitely, if you're going to book my time and I'm going to do all your tax prep and you are going to show up at this appointment, I want you to show up. I want you to have some reason that you have to show up to the appointment and not cancel on me or reschedule. And also, I was having a cash flow problem. I would make all my money at the time of the tax appointments, and I would have this like gaping 6-month period where I made no income. And yet I still had expenses in the business, which was very scary. So she just unlocked this like little thing. She was like, why don't you take a deposit? And I was like, oh my God. Having heard it, I was like, wow, that is 100% the answer. No question. And I implemented it that week. And that week I was able to book a whole bunch of appointments. And I immediately got a couple $1,000s in the bank, solving an immediate and pressing cash flow issue I was having, and helping me make sure that those clients didn't cancel their appointments. It killed 2 birds with 1 stone. It was amazing. So whatever I paid for the coach, I made it back within the first week of working with her because she solved this problem I wasn't able to see clearly for myself. And that's pretty normal. I think any of us who've worked with an outsider knows you can't read the label from the inside, and that you just sometimes really benefit from having an objective outside opinion. So yes, my business coach, I'm still with the same coach I've been with. Her name's Lisa Zahia. I'll put a link in the show notes. If you want to connect with Lisa, she is truly amazing. But yeah, that's been one of the best investments I've ever made in the business. So that taking deposits problem, cash flow problem, commitment problem that I was having, solved that instantly. And then one of the later issues that she helped me with years after that was hiring. So I don't know if you are at the stage in your business where you are ready to hire or you have employees, but hiring presents a number of pretty serious mindset hurdles for anybody who is looking at making their first time hire. When you work for yourself, hiring is very scary. I definitely have episodes in the Sunlight podcast archive about hiring. So if you're looking for tips on that, I have those episodes. Please go back and listen. But there's a lot of mindset garbage that I think women especially often have to work through in order to just basically have the courage to make the leap of hiring your first employee. So there were all these mindset hurdles. There was a financial risk, outlaying this money that you have to pay every month, and you don't know if you'll get income back to cover it. There was the hurdle of increasing the capacity of my business, but at the same time, needing to increase the revenue too, in order to support that second salary. Managing, I never managed anybody before. So that was really scary. Like, how do I direct somebody? I didn't feel like a boss. So just learning how to manage was really difficult. And I'm going to be honest, I sucked at it in the beginning. Absolutely. It's definitely a skill that takes practice, and you need to get educated on and put some effort into to do well. I'm proud to say I'm a much better manager now than I was at that time, but I'm always learning. I'm always learning. I was really nervous about the idea of one day maybe having to fire somebody. What would I do if this employee did not work out? Shortcut to the future. In fact, I did have to fire that employee, and it sucked. It was horrible. But you know what? I did it. I crossed that bridge. The very thing I feared, I did have to do. And I'm glad I did it. I learned that I was capable of it. I learned when it is fair and right to do that. There's a lot in that. I have a lot of lessons in that. It's still maybe a little raw, but maybe one day I'll talk about firing and how what I learned from that. There's also just analyzing my role in the company and building a new role. So even though that particular employee, my first hire ever, did not work out per se, simply going through the exercise of, creating the job description, interviewing candidates, creating test projects, picking somebody, hiring, training somebody, getting them up to speed, teaching someone about my company, even with a bad fit, even with somebody who was not the right person for the role, it still was incredibly valuable. It still had an enormous ROI for me, because even with a terrible personality clash and a wrong fit, she still expanded my capacity to do revenue generating work. I was able to outsource a lot of the admin tasks that really took up so much of my time and prevented me doing those should things, the reaching out, the thought leadership, the writing, things like that. So even though that hire didn't work out, it irrevocably taught me that I, in fact, could scale my business, that this thing I wasn't sure about was, in fact, a possibility. And since that time, I've hired maybe 5 or 6 more people in various roles and capacities. And it's been a joyful experience. I am overall so happy with hiring people in my business. It's been an incredible return on investment. I think most people, when they hire, it is an incredible return on investment, but it's scary. It's scary as fuck. I'm not going to lie. Anyway, if you're thinking about that, definitely go listen to the archive, because I have episodes about my learnings from that. But it's a really important thing to do, but it takes a lot to do it, right? There's a lot of skill involved, and I would certainly invest in some education around hiring, about managing, interviewing, finding good candidates. There's a lot to be learned, and mistakes are expensive for sure. But I made dramatically more income because of doing it. And I learned that it was going to be possible to scale my business. And I hadn't known that that was possible before that point. Also, really important to say is when you hire, you increase the impact of your work, right? I could now serve more people, reach a bigger audience, and just have a bigger impact with the work that Sunlight Tax does. So what a benefit. What an incredible benefit. The third and last example of incredible ROI that I want to share with you, it's the fourth example, is a course that I took from the great Sarah M. Chappell. And I will link to Sarah in my show notes as well, because she is amazing. She taught a course called the Launch Incubator. When I took that course, it was a course that, to me was a fairly large amount of money, although having done it, I will say worth every penny. I made it all back and then a million times more. So worth it. But learning how to launch was a really big deal. So Sarah really taught me, she got me over my own mental blocks over selling over creating a launch plan, which is complicated, a lot of moving parts, a lot of work, very difficult, and needs to be executed well. And I just had a lot of hangups and weird shit about it. So she really helped me unlock the idea of you offering, you're offering to the world coming from a place of service, not salesiness, not pushiness. And that in fact, sales really, when you're authentically aligned with the work that you're doing and telling your story effectively, what you're really doing is not selling to anyone. You are simply giving somebody the information they need to make for themselves a judgment about whether what you're offering is for them or not for them, whether it's going to be worth it for them or not. So that's really all it is. It's not really selling. It's actually sorting. Like, this is for you. This is not for you. This is for me. This is not for me. Right. So my job in that is really to present the information that they need to make the right decision, right? It's not to push them to make a decision. In fact, I feel very strongly that I do not want people joining my program, buying my course, who are not a good fit. I don't feel good taking anyone's money who I don't think I can help, right? And I don't want people in my program who are gonna just have a terrible time. I want people to join my course who are positioned to get a lot out of it, right? Because ultimately, I want them to see the results, right? I'm not doing this work just to make money. I'm not doing it to gratify myself personally. I'm doing it so that people fix their problem, right? They set up taxes the way that they want to. They learn how to invest, learn how to use tax sheltered accounts, learn how to do tax planning that saves them a whole bunch of money, learn what tax credits apply to them, right? That's what I want. I want people to get those things, not to buy my course and let it sit and rot on a shelf, right? All right. So that's what I learned from Sarah Chappell, and both her thoughts on her teaching on selling from a place of authenticity, from a place of service, and also just the technical, very technical details of how to run a marketing campaign, how to run a launch. That has been just worth so much to me. I will link in the show notes to Sarah's work because she is just, I just love what she does. Really, really love what she does. I will also say that in my own program, partly because I love so much what Sarah does, I have a bonus training inside Money Bootcamp called Authentic Sales for Creators. Because I know that a lot of us who are in the creative world kind of grew up with a sense of sales as a dirty word and like feeling really icky about it. And what I love so much about Sarah is she really pulls out the parts that make you feel icky. And she's like, that's actually sort of unaligned sales. What feels icky is icky, and don't do that. Do this. Speak to the people who you're going to serve really well, right? Don't push anyone into things that shouldn't be there. Like, your job is to present information and help people make their own decision. And that's all you're responsible for. So Sarah's wonderful. And so I do have this training about authentic sales inside of Money Bootcamp because of that, because I think her work has been so, so valuable to me, getting my head on straight about how to do this thing that's hard. To summarize, I want to just kind of talk through like what actually makes a good investment. How can you see that something is going to be worth your money versus not, right? So easy to spend a ton of money on stuff that isn't worth it. So I think there's like 3 main metrics that I like to use and I recommend. One is when something is going to teach you a skill that has clear value to you, okay? So just to use my own program as an example, in my own program, the skills that I teach are investing in simplifying your own taxes, in understanding and successfully managing your quarterly taxes, setting up your bookkeeping, simplifying your bookkeeping, making your bookkeeping correspond more to taxes versus just financial accounting, which is like not really something that a very small scale solopreneur needs. Knowing when the right time is to form a corporate entity like an LLC or an S Corp, and knowing when it doesn't make sense, right? Knowing when that's a waste of your money or is going to cause you a bunch of expensive admin that you can't yet afford and that is actually going to make the S Corp, for example, be much more expensive than the money you save from forming it. So those are things that in my program are very clear outcomes, that teach you a skill that is clearly going to benefit you financially, clearly going to save you money, right? If because you buy Money Bootcamp, you stop paying penalties and interest every year because you start properly paying your quarterly taxes, or you make the correct decision about an S Corp and you don't accidentally make a decision that costs you thousands of dollars every year, then it's a no-brainer. It's obvious that it teaches you skills that will save you that money, right? So teaching a skill that has clear value to you, that's metric 1. Metric 2, getting you results faster or more easily, right? For example, when I, invested in my business coach, Lisa, I could have figured out to take deposits for my clients. I would have eventually gotten there. I'm sure of it. But how long would it have taken? Would it be a year, 2 years, 3 years? I don't know. And the fact is, by investing in working with a coach, I got that information instantly. The same week I started with her, I was able to implement that thing that, I would have eventually figured out, but I got it instantly and I had money in the bank within like 2 weeks. So that's just clearly worth it. Getting there faster, not spinning my wheels for ages and not going through, because, if I had had that continuing dry spell of cash crisis for 6 months of every year for 3 years, I might have had to close my doors. When a business runs out of cash, it can't function anymore. So these things can be quite serious and important to take care of. I mean, also in terms of like getting you somewhere faster, getting you results more quickly, more cheaply, with less stress. Just an example from myself is like, I study taxes. I do at least 20 hours of continuing education learning about new tax laws every single year. And you don't have to do that 20 hours of continuing ed learning about all kinds of new tax bills that were written. A lot of that stuff is frankly irrelevant to you. But what I do is I distill the parts. Oh, okay, a freelancer does need to know this part. This will affect my audience. So if you just know that you're in my audience and I'm going to distill that information to you and give it to you because you're part of my program, you saved a lot of time, right? Plus, I had to do all the training to understand the tax law and how it works and be able to explain it in clear English. So, that's another example of like a real shortcut where you just like are paying a fee and you just get the info instantaneously and you have it. So you also have that peace of mind that like you have it. And then the third thing about ROI is value. Now, value is a pretty simple concept, although not all of us think about it all the time. Value means that what you get, like the value to you of what you get is worth more than what you pay for it. That is, if you get $1 more of value from something than the dollars you paid to have it, you have gotten value out of it. Okay. So again, within Money Bootcamp, that's my goal, is to provide an incredible no-brainer amount of value, which to me is really clear, but I'm going to just talk about it for a second. Like, you pay $15.97 to be a part of Money Bootcamp. It will save you, if that saves you $500 every year of penalties because you quit not paying your quarterly taxes properly and you stop all those penalties. If it saves you the money of booking a quarterly tax appointment with your accountant to calculate your tax, your quarterly tax payment, because now you know how to do it because of Money Bootcamp. If it saves you the expensive mistake of forming an S Corp before you're ready to, if it helps you understand the role of your LLC, what you need to do to uphold your LLC and how that does and does not affect your taxes. If it helps you do tax planning that saves you money, that is worth thousands of dollars every year. That depends on your level of income, but tax planning is like one of these incredibly boring snooze fest sounding things that is super exciting, saves you quite a lot of money over the long term. And if you learn how to use tax advantaged accounts, learn a basic, simple investment plan so you feel the confidence of not just opening the tax-advantaged IRA, but actually investing the money that's in it. That is a very important lifelong skill that compounds, literally compounds with compound interest every single year for the rest of your life. I feel so much gratitude that I started doing that 20 years ago, because at this point I can look back at 20 years of investments that have, multiplied by many multiples at this point, and feel like, oh my God, thank God I did that in the past. Current me is so grateful for past me for having actually created that habit of maxing out my IRA every year. And of course, I got better and better, because then after I maxed out my IRA every year, I started learning the more sophisticated stuff like the SEP IRA, the solo 401k. And now I max out one of those every year, the 401k, the solo 401k in my case. But those are things that are like clear money back in your pocket from joining my program. And, the same could be said for a coaching program, another course, a book, hiring a studio assistant. So whatever it is that you're considering, I think those are the metrics to review. So just to review what those metrics are, again, I want you to have like a clear takeaway from this episode. I think you can see that something will have a good return on investment for you if it, number one, gets your results faster or more easily or with less stress. If it teaches you a new skill that will allow you to make money or save money. And value, if you're paying less for it than the money it will save you or help you bring in the future. So those are my 3 metrics for understanding if something will return your investment to you, if it's worth it. All right. If that all sounds good, I want to invite you. I'm offering a free class where I'm going to talk about a lot of the principles behind my own program, some common mistakes that freelancers and creative people make with their money, especially with their taxes. It's going to teach you just a little bit about self-employment tax and also about the systems that I use to make things simpler. So being very tax forward in your bookkeeping setup, because that really saves you a lot of time, given that as a freelancer, solopreneur, most of what you're using your bookkeeping for, unlike a bigger company, most of what you're using it for is actually tax related. So this is why having a tax forward bookkeeping setup just saves you tons of time, tons of headache. So come learn about what that system is, how it works, some of those mistakes, learn a little bit about your taxes. It's a free class. Whether or not you decide that Money Bootcamp is something that you are ready for at this point, it's still a really valuable hour where you're going to learn some stuff that's really, really useful. So I recommend it very highly, whether or not you're interested in Money Bootcamp. But I will talk a little bit about what's in Money Bootcamp and help you understand if it is a good fit for you or not. Again, it's not salesy. It's just like, this is what it is. This is who it's for, the results that people like you have gotten, and you make the decision, if it is for you or not. That's fine. I will never push you. I promise. All right. So you can save your spot if you're registered. So it's a live class and you are welcome and encouraged to join me live. I love that because then you get to introduce yourself. I get to know a little bit more about you. But you'll get the recording if you're registered. So if you register, you will get the recording. And so if you can't make the time, just register. And then that way you will get it. And you can do that at go.sunlighttax.com/free. That's where you can register for the free class. It's called Understand Your Taxes and Make Money, the ultimate guide to understanding the hard parts of self-employment. All right. Well, I hope to see you live in class. That's just in 2 days on Thursday. And have a great week, everybody. Bye. Thank you for listening. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review. It really helps, and share it with a friend. I'm so grateful. This podcast is for education and entertainment only. Nothing in this episode should be taken as individual tax or financial advice. You can find all the tools, books, and links we reference at sunlighttax.com/podcast.